with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Deborah. Thanks, Neil, for putting all of this on. I know that there was a Facebook mishap earlier. So, talk about, the targeting and all of that great stuff. And of course, all of the panelists. I mean, huge props. Definitely second everyone else's opinion here. This has been really great and informative. And, a couple of things about the ascension and the awakening process. It's been so much going on. And essentially, I want to kind of lay out a timeline for people. This is a timeline that I channeled from the Galactic Federation many years ago. And what they told me back in 2015, 2016, was that there was going to be this 4-year cycle between 2016 and 2019. And during this cycle, there was going to be an absolute collapse, ego death, dark night of the soul for all of the major spiritual teachers and leaders all around the world. And so, this is what I say, especially to not even just the panelists, but to those of you who are listening. I believe that the teachers are here, right? And we're here for a reason. So if you kind of look back into the years between 2016 and 2019, and you think about, did you change your job or career? Did you move your house or location? Did you change your relationship or romantic partner? Those kind of things are what you want to look at, is those physical 3D foundations in your life. And by collapsing those layers and collapsing those foundations, you actually allow yourself to rebuild those foundations in a way that better serves you for a higher purpose. So all of these teachers and light workers and leaders all had to do the work before the rest of the world was ready to do it, right? So I just want to remind all of you who have done that work between that timeline that you are a teacher, right? Whether you've stepped into that energy or not, you're being called to. And you had to make some major transitions and changes before the rest of the 8 billion people on this planet had to. And just like Kaya Ra was saying, it's so important that we get as many light workers and teachers as possible on board, teaching their truth, fitting into their piece of the puzzle, because we have an entire population here that is rising up and awakening at this time. So now the second big timeline that we need to be thinking about, and that has been presented to me from the GFL, is between 2020 and 2024. This is going to be a complete collapse of the 3D systems on this planet at a global collective level. So, politically, economically, environmentally, we're going to see this collapse happen so that once again, we have the space to be reborn. And I know that there's a lot of teachers that say 5D and the awakening, the ascension, it's beautiful and it's light and it's love and it's powerful and you manifest really quickly, and you do, and it is quite incredible. But it sucks, right? And we've all been through that. And I think Billy and Kaya were also saying that, it's a step-by-step process in peeling back these layers of old paradigms. And we're talking about ancestral layers. We're talking about past life layers. We're talking about karmic layers. We're talking about childhood trauma layers that we have to peel back to do that work. So it's really just this scale that we have to kind of, ease ourselves into. And yes, things are going to get worse before they get better in the next couple of years. And that's important that we hold space for that. So what is the solution to this, right? Just like Billy was saying, it's important that we focus on the solution. For me, 2 things, right? And I did a lecture earlier today about this. It's about staying in neutrality, because when we're in neutrality, we take a step back from polarity. And right now we're moving in between polarity consciousness and we're moving into unity consciousness. We're moving from 3D into 5D. And 2020 is this year, it's this precipice where we're actually getting all of the old limiting beliefs and old habit patterns and old karmic energies hitting us just as hard as we are getting all of the new vibration, new frequencies, new realities hitting us simultaneously. This is what 5D is all about. 5D, this new earth paradigm, is not just all love and light, right? You don't just stop stubbing your toe on the table because you're ungrounded, right? You're still going to experience these hiccups in your life. 5D is about how you perceive what's going on throughout your day, right? We're still going to be dabbling in the 3D world. We're still going to be dabbling in polarity. but it's about rising above it and understanding that you have ultimate control over your reaction to what's happening. And the best place that we can be in from moment to moment, to be above the 3D polarized world, is to hold that space of neutrality, right? To be in 0 point frequency. Things like meditation. I know it's been rehashed over and over again, but you don't have to sit down for 6 hours a day to meditate in order to be in 5D, right? It's about incorporating this conscious awareness into moment of your life, right? Going out into nature, being with plants, being with animals, being with an experience that does not hold a perception allows you to once again experience that neutrality and that 0 point frequency. The more and more we can get into this space in between the chaos, the more and more we can utilize our free will and fully harness our reality to the highest of our potential. And that's what the ascension is all about, right? It's just understanding that ultimately our observation creates this reality as stated by quantum physics. And as long as we're aware of that free will and that consciousness, then we can be the ultimate programmer, not just character in this game of life. We're in this huge cycle. We're moving into this age of ascension and awakening in 5D again. We've got to collapse the systems in order to rebuild them. Like I was mentioning before, education, politics, everything's going to look much different. I know firsthand that the solutions, even environmental solutions, are all out there. Free energy technologies are all out there. They're just waiting for that go ahead, you know, all right, it's time, and it all gets released, right? So we are really on the verge right now at this time. And, you know, moving forward, this next generation is quite incredible. There's major issues with this younger generation, even younger than myself. So I'm in the millennial generation, moving into Gen Z, and I don't know what the younger one is called, but a lot of the problems, just like Billy was saying, is they're very apathetic, you know, and even in my generation, the millennial generation expectation. We were given everything that our parents didn't have when they were growing up. So we didn't really have to fight to get what we needed, which is amazing because all of a sudden that fight or flight mechanism in our own brain was taken away. And when that fight or flight mechanism, that 3D paradigm is taken away, it leaves room for that creativity. It leaves room for that conscious expansion. It leaves room for that 0 point frequency. But if we're not taught those tools, if we're not even taught that we are energy beings, then we fall prey to depression and anxiety. And you've got a whole generation right now that is growing up saying, okay, so I have everything that a 16-year-old, that a 12-year-old could ever possibly want and imagine. Why am I anxious? Why am I depressed? Why am I questioning everything? And why doesn't anyone have any of the answers, right? And that's how I grew up, feeling like no one had the answers, and I had everything but nothing at all, you know? So it's really exciting to see all of these parents awakening their children, and a lot of the parents watching my videos and other, you know, panelists' videos as well, with their children, with their small children, and awakening them, I think is really quite incredible and beautiful. So really powerful stuff moving forward. And I want to just mention a little bit about alchemy. You know, when you kind of originally asked this question, and alchemy to me means transmutation, right? That's what alchemy is. And of course, taking full control and power over your own reality and being able to create and magnify whatever it is that you want. But when we talk about transmutation, it's about understanding the darkness and bringing it into the light. And a lot of us right now are kind of struggling into these lower vibrational realms. I mean, it's kind of hitting everyone really hard, these awakening and ascension symptoms. And I just want to kind of share a quick story about transmuting the darkness into light. And hopefully this story kind of resonates with, you know, the listeners and even the panelists as well. So it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and you know, I've been psychically attacked in all of the ways you could ever possibly imagine, pretty much my whole life, right? Even going into childhood. And so there was this one kind of maybe a month or two where it was just coming at me from all angles. And I was doing a lot of the quantum work, and of course that's where you kind of become a target. And so I was having this really bad dream, but really I also understand that they can kind of set up these dreamscapes. And so I was in this dream, or this dreamscape. And there was these three huge dark beings, and they were chasing me. And in this dream, it was just this never ending running away, this never ending fear, right? And it was so much fear. And I was running and running and running. And then halfway through the dream, I, became lucid. I woke up in the dream. And I asked myself, I said, why am I running, right? If these dark beings that are chasing me are actually just souls themselves, if they're also just fractals of consciousness, a part of the greater scheme of the collective, then they're a part of me. So in that moment, I stop running and I turn around to face them. And they were huge, they were like 10 feet tall. And I just look at them and I said, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. And I said, you need a hug. Give me a hug. So I literally spread out my astral arms, my dream arms, and I wrap my arms around them and I give them a hug. And at first, which is typical with these, beings and entities, they start stabbing my back, right? And it drives more fear. And then I'm like, no, just hold the frequency of love. And that's what I did. And I held it. And I just literally filled my being, my essence up with pure unconditional love. And I gave that to them. And in that moment, it's like all three of them just burst into this, like millions of little dark particles, and they transmuted into the light, right? So anyone who is dealing with your own deep inner turmoil, your own deep reflections, maybe you are of the younger generations and you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety, you need to realize that this is a part of the process to allow you to get back to source. And the number one thing that is always going to allow you to transmute the darkness into light is appreciation and gratitude. The more that we understand that those dark aspects are just aspects of self, just mere reflections of one another, of the ultimate source that is, that's when you can understand and have compassion and gratitude for those darkest aspects. And no longer are those aspects dark or hold any fear or power over you anymore, because you've transmuted them through appreciation. Two things I would mention. One is, so I do a lot of astral traveling, remote viewing. I do a lot of exploration into past lifetimes, both on and off this planet, I guess past future lifetimes. So I'm just like, I'm out of my body a lot. And that's kind of where you leave yourself vulnerable and open in that astral realm. We need to realize that the astral has both light and dark in it. So the one thing that I do that I learned a couple of years back from interdimensionals was an invisibility cloak. So now every time I do any sort of spiritual work, anytime I, download and upload into the collective consciousness, I do it actually in an invisibility cloak. This is just a metaphysical kind of energy blanket that I put around my aura and my astral body. I always set the intention with the invisibility cloak that nothing that does not match, anything that doesn't match my vibrational frequency can come into my space, right? So the one time me and my wife almost got hit by a car, and she was all pissed off at the guy who didn't see us. It was middle of the day, right? Bright, sunny in LA. And I told her, I said, I'm sorry, babe. Like, I put an invisibility cloak on both of us before we left the house, so you can't blame him, So this stuff really works, right? So invisibility cloak is kind of my number one go-to. And then other than healthy boundaries and everything else that the panelists have said, cutting cords is huge, right? We need to realize that every single time you think about anyone, you're creating a cord with them. Every time anyone thinks about you, they're creating a cord with you. And so it's really funny, after I get off a live video on YouTube, I close my eyes, open my third eye, take a look at my aura, and I literally look like a giant porcupine, because I have like hundreds of these white cords that are all connected to me. So I just kind of bulldoze all the cords and cut them all after a live video, because these people are, whether they're feeding from my energy or just connecting to my vibration or what have you, it's really important. Once again, to bring up my wife, we'll be in a conversation and all of a sudden, the back of my neck will really start hurting. And I'm like, babe, does your neck hurt? Like right on the right side, like right in between this area right here? She's like, yeah, actually it's feeling a lot better right now. And I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I just took that on. I'm just going to go ahead and cut the cord. So we need to realize also that it's okay to cut the cords with your loved ones. It doesn't mean that you're getting them out of your life. It just means that you're clearing space from the old connection, which was in the last moment 2 seconds ago, and you're opening up a new space to create a brand new connection in the next moment. So invisibility cloak and cutting cords are my number one. Number two, go-to things that I use as my tools in the energetic space.